part of the question, and I give the call to the member for Clark.
Good evening, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, this bill is all well and good, but the substantive matter remains that the tertiary sector is genuinely in dire straits, and the government's latest changes are going to make things a whole lot worse. Deputy Speaker, yes, to be fair to the government, the budget did include $1 billion for research funding. But to be honest, this is going to be a one-off sugar hit, and will do very little to offset the $7.2 billion in research funding, which is going to be short as a direct result of the much-reduced international student income. Deputy Speaker, the budget also failed to address the dramatic effect of the pandemic on universities, which, according to the NTEU's estimates, is causing the loss of 12,000 jobs in the sector and $3 billion in revenue. In that context, Deputy Speaker, it beggars belief that JobSeeker was not extended to the tertiary sector, just as it beggars belief it wasn't extended to other sectors such as local government. Deputy Speaker, and now, of course, the tertiary sector has got to deal with the government's dreadful job-ready graduate and supporting regional and remote students changes, which will decrease funding in real terms to the tertiary sector by another $1 billion a year. I would associate myself with the comment by the member for Bran. One of the reasons I'm needing to address some of these matters this evening is because of the dreadful decision by the federal government in the previous sitting week to gag debate on that bill, a bill that was of nation-changing significance, and many of us were queued up to contribute to the debate. And it was very, very disappointing that the government that week did gag debate and disallow so many of us to make a contribution. Deputy Speaker, these recent changes, and it is lamentable that Central Alliance did back those changes, in particular in the Senate, and I commend my Tasmanian colleague, Senator Lambie, for fighting the good fight as much as she could in the Senate to block those dreadful changes. Let's not forget that the government's Job-Ready Graduates and Supporting Regional and Remote Students Bill, now Act, effectively reduces the overall government contribution to degrees from 58% to 52% and raises student contributions from 42% to 48%. And who's it going to impact most, Deputy Speaker? Of course, we talk about the humanities and so on, but let's drill down a bit. It's going to affect most women because the fee restructuring will impact women more greatly than men because the fees that will be increased are for courses that are more commonly studied by women. Indeed, Deputy Speaker, on average, women will have their fees increased by 9% in comparison to men. And who else will it impact, Deputy Speaker? Indigenous Australians, because the disciplines that Indigenous Australians currently study and work in, well, because of the disciplines they currently study and work in, it's estimated that they will, on average, be paying 19% more than non-Indigenous students. And of course, on younger people, Deputy Speaker, perhaps no one is more negatively affected by the government's reforms, so-called reforms, than young people. And let's not forget, youth unemployment at the moment is at a 23-year high of 16%. So, so many of these young people who have just finished school, who will be finishing school in a matter of weeks after they finish their exams. I noticed New South Wales has just started their HSC examinations. What hope them when the tertiary landscape is so difficult? What hope them who want to study in the humanities and hone their critical thinking skills and competencies at a time this country needs them the most? And of course, a dreadful effect from these so-called reforms on regional universities and students, where there will be a significant impact. Characteristically, Deputy Speaker, regional universities offer a greater proportion of courses that will have their funding effectively cut under this bill compared with their metropolitan counterparts. Deputy Speaker, the government's position is just deeply misguided. Education should be celebrated and reinforced and funded properly. We need to understand that knowledge and education has an inherent value to both the people that enjoy it and to the country as a whole. Let's not forget, Deputy Speaker, that the more educated a community is, the more employable they are, the more healthy they are, and the happier they are. This country cannot rely indefinitely on our fabulous rural sector and our amazing mineral and other resources. You know, we've ridden on the sheep's back and out of the mining sector and the fact that we are the world's #1 coal and iron ore exporter. I think we're the #1 or #2 of LNG. But we can't rely on that forever. You know, we have to realise that our future is in being a smarter country. So we should be doing everything we can to make this country smarter. I have long advocated, Deputy Speaker, that the first degree for Australian citizens should be free. We should return to what Gough Whitlam's government introduced in the early 1970s. That was a fabulous reform, and the fact that it was wound back was very disappointing. And we should be investing in all the other areas of education, Deputy Speaker. We should properly fund early childhood education. It's not childcare, it's early childhood education. And in countries where they treat it as such and invest in it as such, those countries are rewarded. We should fund our primary schools better. We should fund our high schools better. We should fund our colleges better. We should fund our vocational training and TAFEs better. And we should be funding our universities better. Can we afford it? Of course we can. You know, it's not a case of, oh, you're independent, you're up there on the crossbench, you don't have to worry about the Treasury. But the fact is, we are a fabulously wealthy country. I think we're the 11th biggest economy as measured by GDP. We're the second wealthiest, second only to the Swiss, when it comes to our median wealth per adult. I'll say that again. I don't know that a lot of people understand that, including in this place, that as measured by median wealth per adult, we are the second richest people on the planet. And at a time when the government is growing our national public sector debt, or federal government debt, to $1 trillion+, when we're spending that sort of money, with my full support, I would add, we need to be spending that sort of money. But how on earth can we be spending that sort of money to get through the pandemic, or taking our debt up to that sort of level to get us through the pandemic, but not be addressing fundamental issues like properly funding our education in this country? Deputy Speaker, I think it's lamentable that we had a budget the other week, which sure it was a jobs, business budget, and sure it was fabulous for middle-income earners who have got a job to get a tax cut. But what a missed opportunity to fix so many of the enduring problems in this country. What a missed opportunity to solve our housing crisis. What a missed opportunity to lift government pensions and payments up to a level that people can live on with dignity. What a missed opportunity for the Treasurer to say, OK, we can't give you an exact figure for unemployment benefits after Christmas because we don't know what the economy will look like, but we will. But we do make an in-principle, ironclad promise that unemployment benefits will never fall below the poverty line, and certainly won't be reduced from the current job seeker rate. What a missed opportunity to properly fund our public health system and restore it to provide universal free public health care for every Australian, and restore our public health system back to what it once was, the genuine envy of the world. What a missed opportunity to properly fund education at every level. So many opportunities were missed in that budget to make this a fairer country. We can't build our future, Deputy Speaker, just on jobs and growth and tax cuts for big business. Sure, we need to do those things, but we also need to fund everything else that this country needs. And there is no better time than right now when there is a justifiable preparedness to grow our debt to such high levels. Deputy Speaker, I'll conclude my comments there. The bill we are discussing here tonight, it's all well and good. It's all well and good. But really, it's just a bit of theatre when you think of the context and when you think of the real issue here. and that is the desperate need to properly fund the tertiary sector. It's vitally important for this country. It's vitally important that we understand that education and knowledge and training has an inherent value. It does make the community more employable. It does make the community healthier and happier. It will make this country more prosperous. And maybe we can go from being the second wealthiest people on the planet to being the wealthiest people on the planet. We certainly won't ever be the wealthiest people on the planet if we continue to rely on our agricultural production and our mines. It's not a case of chopping it down and digging it up. It's a case of getting everyone into the classroom and making them smarter and realising the potential that this country genuinely has. So tonight's bill does have my support, but the government's position on tertiary education overall, I condemn. I've condemned it for a long time, and I'll continue to condemn it until it changes its policy and turns this country around. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.